More breaks, Noles football every Saturday through the month of November, and hopefully for one Saturday in December to get it going. Alongside Ira Schoffel, the managing editor of Warchant.com, my name is Tom Lang. This is the Monday Smash presented by our friend, State Farm agent Russ Forhis. More on Russ in a bit. Ira, how you feeling, man? The bye week. I'm so sorry that you were going through it during the bye week. That's when you're supposed to get a break, but how's it going tonight?
Good, man. I'm kind of glad how it worked out because it was I didn't feel so bad about skipping practice last Wednesday and leaving that to you and the rest of the crew. If it was a game week, I don't know. Maybe I would have forced myself out there. So no, it was good, man. I'm getting close to being over it, not totally over it, but feel good and excited for another game week, man. Watching those games Saturday. I don't know the last time I've had a Saturday to just watch college football. I feel like I don't even remember the bye weeks last year, but it was cool to just watch all these other teams and kind of get a different perspective, I guess, on the team we cover.
Just feels like a wide open season, Ira. You could look at it a couple of ways that, there are many teams that are capable of playing Florida State in a winner take all format in the playoff. And maybe Florida State doesn't come out on top, but then there aren't really many that you would say are definitely better than Florida State, and Florida State could beat any one of them. So it's a strange year. When's the last time you could remember a year where through 4 or 5 games, depending upon how many all these teams have played, that there's no real clear favorite like a Georgia or an Alabama or a Clemson or Ohio State? That's the way it's been since the playoff has been a thing in the last 10 years.
Yeah, it is a little strange. And maybe that'll develop. But yeah, to this point, it really hasn't. I don't know if that speaks to kind of the effects of the transfer portal on the game in general. But yeah, there's no team I've seen that I've said, okay, well, Florida State wouldn't be in that team's league. And, even during the offseason, when we thought this was a team that could contend for a championship in the ACC and maybe a playoff spot, you kind of wondered how they would match up if they got there. Could they play with the Georgia? Could they play with some of these teams? And yeah, man, I think they could. I mean, all these teams, are a lot of these teams don't look dynamic either in one area or another. Georgia's defense is good. I don't know that it's elite like it has been in the past. And their quarterback doesn't really scare you. Some of their skill players do. Bowers for sure.
Yeah.
But, so you just look at, obviously Caleb Williams is amazing, but USC's defense is atrocious. So there's just every team I think probably has some sort of, area where they're concerned, just like Florida State fans are concerned about areas of this team, with the exception so far maybe of Michigan, but that's just probably because we haven't seen them get exposed by anybody yet. They haven't really played anybody.
Yeah, so looking at that, and Director Ben behind the scenes puts up one of the top 25 rankings and how Florida State now is a top 5 team, but they drop again in one poll this weekend on a scale, Ira, of it's much ado about nothing, win your games, and you're going to go where you want to go if you're Florida State too. Am I the only one here that's not nuts? What the hell did Florida State do to keep on dropping in the polls? On that scale, where do you fit in? Because, today, earlier on the Jeff Cameron show, you could see it in the chat, the message boards, our social media. It's driving some people mad here that, Florida State has 2 very impressive wins, and yet the world doesn't really feel like Florida State has those impressive wins on the resume.
Yeah, it's weird. I think the thing that I guess what when you sit down and kind of look at it, maybe the voters felt like they overreacted when they put Florida State all the way up at 3 after they beat LSU, and then certainly the way LSU played this past week doesn't help. Anybody that already had that feeling. So at the end of the day, it's not a great thing. I think the Clemson loss to Duke was probably what really screwed things up, because that gave a perception that Clemson's not that good. And Clemson gave Duke that game. I mean, and I think the Clemson we saw against Florida State and the Clemson for most of the game against Syracuse is what Clemson is. I mean, if they don't turn the ball over 4 times or whatever it was in that game, they're going to beat Duke, and then that win looks better. But Clemson looked so bad. They looked like they couldn't get out of their own way. So that game got totally devalued, even though if you had watched it, you could see, man, Clemson's a super talented football team.
Yeah, agreed. And it seems like Notre Dame, being the top-ranked one-loss team in the country, got a lot of credit for beating Duke. So
right.
It's fascinating. It's basically, if you want, it's how college football and the pollsters have been for a long time, or whatever point you want to pick and harp on at a given time you can. But the good news is, this is for the taking. This year, a spot in the playoff, uh, the whole prize. It just feels like this is a year to go ahead and take it. Who wants it? Who's going to go do that? And that's what Florida State sets out to do beginning this week. We're in October. They've only played one home game. Now they get to play 3 in a row. You covered practice last week. You're out there on Tuesday. You hear the coaching staff today. What's your sense after, attending all those press conferences, which Florida State does just before lunchtime on a Monday? What's your sense of the way that they were steering the ship for the bye week practices and now setting the tone for the first of 3 straight home games as FSU looks to, make the trajectory very clear that it's about Charlotte and it's about getting to the playoff if they take care of business? How did the coaches strike you today?
Going back to even last week, just some of the things I was hearing around the program is I felt like there was some confidence that they knew why the offense wasn't really clicking the way they expected to click. And so I think there was some confidence. I was just hearing, around the program that there's a couple things as a couple guys get healthy and or get a clearer picture of things, then they really expected the offense to take off. I really liked a couple of the comments that were made today in the press conferences about how the team responded, how the team came back Sunday night. Alex Atkins talked about it. Mike Norvell talked about it. And I thought it was insightful because a lot of times when a team has a bye week, I think Alex Atkins described it perfectly. You just had a huge win and then you have a bye week. Sometimes that can lead to guys just kind of losing their focus a little bit. So they were really eager to see what the team looked like when they came back and when they got back to practice on Sunday night. And apparently, by all accounts, it was exactly what they wanted to see. There's a spirit, an attention to detail, a hunger that these players realize that this season is setting up perfectly for them. And they haven't played great yet, but if they do, they can have an amazing run. And so I think it was cool to hear that the players have that, because to me, and then you combine that with what they're asking the defense to start doing, really trying to set the tone on defense as opposed to being a little bit more kind of bend but don't break. I think all of that sets up for, I think, what could lead to, a team playing with much more conviction here in these next couple of weeks.
So let's do it this way then. The defense, everybody's been talking about it. It seems like the coaching staff and their remarks kind of match the criticism of the fan base. Like they see it and they're willing to talk about these things that the fan base might point out. That's not always the case with a coaching staff at a press conference and then the fans on the boards. They might talk about something completely different. But through the first 4 games, the defense has been largely successful. And especially in every game, there's at least a small window of true dominance from Florida State's defense. And in a lot of cases, it's more than a half where the defense dominates and comes out on top and helps make winning plays for Florida State. But if Ira Schoffel is giving an A+ to an F- for Adam Fuller's defense through 4 weeks, now that you've had a little bit of time to watch other teams around college football and some of the struggles that they might go through, where would you put Florida State's defense in a grading scale of your own? And, maybe juxtapose that against what you heard from Adam Fuller today and what you think they're going to do moving forward.
Are we grading them based on what we think their potential should be, or are we grading them just as a college defense?
Just as a college defense, I think, there's definite potential on both sides of the ball to be better than they have been. But so far, what you've seen against maybe your own expectations or the curve of college football, what do you think they've done?
I think they've been about a B- on defense. I don't, again, I mean, they've been good enough to win at Clemson. And the reason they were able to do that is they held Clemson to 7 points in the second half. They were good enough to shut LSU basically out in the second half. So those are real positives. But they've also had, the first halves of those games were not good at all. I wouldn't go down to a C+. I think I'd stay around in that B- range. Mm-hmm. I think to get to an A, I don't know if they can get to an A. We'll see. But I think they can get to a B+ for sure. And to get there, I think it's what, they're talking about, which is, just being more assertive. I think that was a word that when I went back and read the transcript, Mike Norvell made the comment a couple times about just playing more aggressively and assertively. And we've all used that word aggressively, like over the last week, like everybody's throwing that word out there. And I think the perception is that and he brought up, like the perception is that means you've got to send 8 or send 9, and just be ultra aggressive scheme wise. And what he was saying is we need to be more aggressive in how we tackle, in how we cover, in how we hit, all the and how we take on blockers, and that's what I think they need. I mean, that's what I think. To me, that's what's lacking. Even when they've played well, you've seen that come out at times, but not consistently. Like Clemson completing all those slants all day, and Castellano, species quarterback, getting all those long runs on third and long situations, and just those types of things are not. There's not an aggressiveness there. There's not a conviction there,
Yeah.
and now that seems kind of nebulous. Like I don't know what your thoughts are. I don't know how you flip that switch, but I do think they're on the right track.
Yeah. So if I was to do the thing that impresses me the most and the thing that concerns me the most, the thing that's impressed me through 4 games is when Florida State plays physical, they're as physical as any defense Florida State has had in a long time. You could go all the way back to, Jane Daniels leaving his feet for LSU and coming down to earth in such a way that the referee had to pull Tatum Bethune aside. Bethune himself has probably 4 or 5 hits this season that you just go, oh, man, when's the last time a Florida State linebacker has been that assertive? And he did it again on a quarterback run up at Clemson. The physicality that Florida State had to play with in certain moments of the Clemson game to get downhill. Like I remember in the fourth quarter, Renardo Green got run over by Shipley.
Yes.
I mean, absolutely run over. Now, he was coming from a different part of the field, and he wasn't perfectly.
He wasn't really squared up, but yeah.
And then later in that fourth quarter, he lays out Will Shipley near the line of scrimmage, and he gets his revenge. You go, ooh, that is physical. Then Renardo makes the play on the perimeter on a 3rd and 1 in overtime. We know that the decision's bad, but the play is about being physical on the perimeter. You've got to be able to do that, get downhill, and make that play. I think this defensive line, Ira, has been extremely physical. I don't know that they were always rewarded for it in the Clemson game because the umpire and that crew let them play. And there was tugging and grabbing and holding all over the place. And I know that John Papucha said today that was Jared Verse's best game maybe as a Seminole in his career. But they have been very physical when they want to be. And that's something that we have not seen around here in a long time. Would you agree with that at least?
Yeah, I would. But there have been enough times where it hasn't been there that makes you, that has kind of soured it. And that's what's kind of, diminished their performance overall because, again, probably most notably in pass coverage, where they've just allowed so many completions when they were in the area or too many cheapies. I think that from that standpoint, and then also, they've been sloppy at times with tackling. They've been sloppy at times when getting into the backfield, chasing the quarterback, maybe taking bad angles or missing opportunities. Yep. So those types of things, like letting the other team off the hook, kind of like playing with their food a little bit. I think there's a difference. I guess that's what it comes down to is like this defense has shown the ability to do some of those amazing things, but because they're not consistent with it, it's the difference between giving up, having bad quarters and not having bad quarters. And so that could be there, but I don't know exactly I don't know is Adam Fuller or the players, how they flip that switch.
Yeah, agreed. So the number one concern I'd have is it looks like they're thinking out there a lot. You can tell that, maybe in certain situations when they're in a zone, I know that there was a criticism today. You're allowed to cover a guy a little bit closer. You're allowed to get downhill and mark somebody man on man and pick them up quicker and be more decisive. You could see that there are moments that, the linebackers against Castellanos and a couple of those runs, they're double covering receivers that are dragging across the field when that's not their responsibility. Why leave where you are right now? You are where you're supposed to be. Why go out over here? Stay at home and play with instincts. That would be the concern is at times it looks like they're thinking. And Ira, again, could it be a through line that what the fans want to see, which is getting downhill, a little bit more man-to-man, being aggressive, getting in the backfield and trying to force action and make some plays, is exactly what the coaching staff wants to do here moving forward for the next 8 games. It's just be more aggressive and downhill.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things that's happened here with the season, and we talked about a little bit on Jeff's show today, is this schedule, because of the way it was set up with 2 huge games of the first month and then that bye week, I feel like it didn't give them a chance to kind of take a week by week approach and really figure out, okay,
Mhm.
this is what we think this team is going to be best at. This is what this team's identity is going to be. And then, like, okay, now we're going to work towards fixing it week by week because you had, and again, I'm not to make excuses, but right after the season opener against LSU, you did have a bunch of guys over the next couple of weeks get a lot of illnesses. I mean, there were a lot, and Mike Norvell finally talked about it today about how many guys have been sick over the last couple of weeks. That could have changed a little bit in terms of like who was available and what can we change. And I think to me, it looked like they used this first month of the season to kind of like, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to play. And then we'll take the bye week to kind of figure out, does this work? What doesn't work? And now we'll see what they do going forward. It may be there's sometimes where defensive players need a slim down package so that they don't think as much. Some guys, it doesn't matter. They can play the same way. But I think now if the coaches are honest with themselves and honest with what they're seeing on the field, I think they're coming to those conclusions that, we need to do some things to help these players play faster and more instinctive.
Robert, thank you very much for the contribution and the kind words. He quotes Jared Verse calling on a lack of stats. If I go all year without a sack, it just means my teammate is one-on-one, and you don't want that. Again, for even if Florida State is not lighting up the world, Ira, in tackles for loss or sacks on a quarterback, you're seeing a lot of impact plays being made. It sounds very homerish to say they're close. They're close to having a big game, but Josh Farmer stands out in the Clemson game and makes 3 or 4 plays that are just absurd, forcing the action from Klubnik, who played well. I thought Braden Fisk was a terror in the LSU game and has had his moments. Fabian Lovett took over a drive at Clemson. It was deep inside Clemson's own territory. They were backed up, where he's got a pass deflection and a big win early. They've had their moments on 4th and short. They stopped the run pretty well, but they just don't have a ton of those splash plays, from Jared Verse specifically. And then Patrick Payton's made some good plays as well. Do you think Florida State's defensive line, this is the last question before we get to the offense, do you think they're as good as we hyped them up to be, or might there be a little room for improvement there?
I think they're good, but I don't think, because of, like you talked about, letting them play. Like if they're not going to call it holding every play,
right?
And so the downside to rushing 4 is if they keep in an extra guy to block, and you've got 6 guys blocking 4, there can be a whole lot of holding going on. So sometimes you do have to bring pressure just because you got to get some guys in space to create some opportunities to make plays. So I think they're still as good as we thought we were. There's nobody that I would say has been less impressive than I expected, other than maybe Fabian Lovett. I think maybe I expected a little bit more production from Fabian Lovett, and I think that'll come. He's a proven player. But as far as the group overall, I think they're still very talented. I think they'll make plays, but I don't think they're good enough to make, especially if the secondary is not going to be more aggressive. And again, like lock on to the receivers. I mean, if you're only going to rush 4 and the corners and safeties are not going to be very aggressive in their coverage, well, that's not going to be a very effective defense. So, that there's something there needs to be tied up.
Yeah, I'm interested to see this next sequence of the 3 home games, Ira, because, I think it very simply, Florida State has played 2 very good opponents, and then they laid a bit of an egg in one of their layup games. And this is all we've seen, but there's only 4 games of a sample size. Southern Miss, you did exactly what you're supposed to do. Boston College, you didn't. And then you played 2 very good opponents, which is more than a lot of different teams in the top 10 can say about what they've had in their schedule. If you're talking about Michigan or Washington or Oregon or, to a degree, even Ohio State. Like, I'm not sure what Notre Dame really is, Ira. I know that game was close late, but are we really sure that both of those teams are at the peak of what they can be, what Ohio State has been? Like last year, they might have been the best team in the country. Are they on that level again? I'm not so sure. So that's where the defense is right now, and we're interested to see when Florida State plays more of these games like Virginia Tech and Syracuse, and then Duke with maybe a backup quarterback. Do they start to rack up those numbers and show that dominance, which takes us to the offensive side of the football? You said B- for the defense. If you're grading on a scale, is it also a B- for the offense, or do you go somewhere else?
I'd probably say a B for the offense. And on that side, I know for a fact they can be an A, they can be an A+ offense. And I think that, when you look at the reasons why that could be though, and this is why like I'm very excited about what the offense is going to look like this week, and the next 2 or 3 weeks, because if Robert Scott really is back out there, for extended plays, extended series, extended drives, I think that is a huge difference. Maurice Smith just got back this past game. We can't forget the fact that he didn't play against Boston College, he didn't play against Southern Miss, so you got him back. You might get Robert Scott back. You maybe could put Bless Harris back at right tackle. You've also got, as you said, you got Kentron Portier back. Kentron Portier in the spring we thought was going to be a legitimate star quality player receiver, and there have been times we've seen him look that way. He has not been available in the first month of the season. Mike Norvell said he may be back here soon. So Ja'Kai Douglas is expected to be back as well. So again, now you're getting all of those parts together. I know the focus is on the running game, but I think, man, if you get Robert Scott back and if Jordan Travis is healthy, which I think he's getting close to healthy, I don't think you got to solve a whole lot of problems with the running game. I think that's going to solve a lot of that. And now you put that with the receiving and the passing game, and I think you get back to an A pretty quickly.
Yeah, and watching what happened this weekend, and it's not a great look in terms of the strength of the schedule when you see how many yards and points LSU gave up defensively to Ole Miss. And nobody's going to argue that. I mean, that's a game that looked like a Big 12 game, and that's not typical of what you see in the SEC. But every time you're watching it play, somebody else is in the red zone, and it's just 10 minutes go by, and then there's a red zone possession and another one. If that was the NFL, Scott Hansen would be awfully busy with the LSU and Ole Miss game. But at the same time, if you're just looking at defensive front versus offensive line, Florida State has seen two monster defensive fronts, and they've been able to produce in fits and starts against them. But I think one thing we've learned through 4 games, Ira, is there is no doubt that this offensive line is better when Robert Scott is on the field. We knew that about Maurice Smith before they went on the trip to Clemson. But in the preseason, I'll cop to it. I thought, if it's Bless Harris at left tackle and Jeremiah Byers at right, I don't know that there's that big of a drop-off, for the offensive line. And what we've come to realize is, yes, there is. There's a significant drop-off. Robert Scott could be one of the low-key MVPs for this team. If he gets back on the field and shows how healthy he is, that could change the way the offense runs, quite literally, the way they run the football.
And I'll tell you what, again, go back and if people want to watch the Alex Atkins interview today, he said a couple things I thought were real insightful about that. Not just that Robert Scott's a guy that can play. He's a good NFL quality offensive tackle, but I think he was second team All ACC last year. But the fact that you would have had, you have Casey Roddick as a first-year transfer from Colorado at left guard. If he had Robert Scott next to him during these games, especially early in the year, it would be good for him to have a guy that's been in Alex Atkins' system for 4 years, Mike Norvell's offense for 4 years. And so he could kind of coach him through things. If Maurice Smith had been on the field for all those first 4 games, now he'd have 2 bedrocks next to him. And I'm not saying Casey Roddick's been a problem, but that's the kind of thing you would have. Instead, you have to move Bless Harris over there. He played 1 game last year. He's been in the system now for 2 years, but that was over a year and a half, 2 years. But that was his only game last year, was that season opener. So now you have him next to a guy who's brand new, next to a Darius at center who's not as comfortable as Maurice. So again, we talked all offseason about how this offense had 8 offensive linemen that they knew they could win with, and they do. But several of them were new to this system. And then when you lose Robert Scott and Maurice Smith, now you don't have what you originally thought you were going to have. And if that gets settled back in, I think that's just a huge deal.
Yeah, I'd say, again, if you watch those press conferences between Boston College and Clemson, and you're in the room, I'm not. So I do want to get your opinion on the way it feels when you hear this coaching staff talk. I thought there was concern, like legitimate concern with what they saw. And then, the magnitude of a game against Clemson. Mike Norvell didn't sound as assured as he has in some other cases. I found it was just a little bit unsure of himself, maybe of what he was looking at. And maybe it was because Jordan Travis wasn't completely healthy, so he didn't know what he was going to get in that next game. But it seems like they feel better about what they're looking at after self-scouting during the bye week. And that's another benefit. It's not just about health, but they've got time to assess what they've got. That's the way it felt as I watched it on Warchant TV. But how did it feel in the room? And what do you think about the way the coaching staff presented today, especially offensively with some of the concerns that they have.
Yeah, no, I think you're reading that 100% correct. I mean, part of it is they are going to be facing some not as imposing teams in these next few weeks. So that would make you feel a little bit better, a little less trepidation. And you're going to be at home. I mean, think about that. A week ago, Mike Norvell is trying to put on a brave face, obviously, but he has a quarterback going. Think where Mike Norvell was a week ago. His quarterback had just gotten hurt at Boston College. Now he's going to play, and he knew he was going to play, but he got hurt. He wasn't sure if he would have Maurice Smith. He knew he probably wasn't going to have Robert Scott. And you're going up against the team. You're going to Clemson, or I guess this was 2 weeks ago. But
Yep.
You're going to be going to Clemson. Unbelievable atmosphere with not your whole team, not your whole offense. Now he feels like he's getting closer to having his full offense. Plus, you're going to have these few games here at home where you can really fine tune things. And again, as I sat there, and I'm not necessarily going to change my outlook based on what their confidence is or lack of confidence is. But as we kind of sat there and went through it during the press conference, I'm with them. I mean, I feel very excited about what this offense could do now. Now that you made it through that first month, you might get some of these guys back healthy, and you have this stretch now where you can really kind of fine tune some things as opposed to just trying to get through the first month.
Yeah, that's the exciting part of what's coming here. If they were dominant, and that would be great, obviously, but if Florida State was dominant through the first 4 games and didn't have many questions, I don't know how excited out of a bye week you are about the Virginia Tech challenge, like specifically the challenge of the game. There's 1 of 12 in the regular season. You're always excited to a degree, but I'm fascinated by what they're going to do over these next 3 games, because what they do on offense, if there are any changes beyond personnel, maybe the way they call plays, the tempo, the formations, that's going to tell you, without them going to the dais and speaking it aloud, what they saw, what they think they can be better at. And I wonder if there is going to be any change at all, how significant a change, if there is. How do they call an offense? What do they want to be about? What do they want their identity to be moving forward? They've had time. They've got data points. They're undefeated. Jordan was hurt. They got through it. Now, what do you want to be? And I think that's, for a game that, according to Las Vegas, is somewhere between 25 and 30 points of a margin between Florida State and Virginia Tech. This is a fascinating game to see what they think of themselves and what this coaching staff thinks they can be moving forward. That's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, and, the other thing I would touch on also, I was just thinking about this as you were talking. They also, as excited as everybody is about these new weapons they have in the passing game, Keon Coleman, Jaheim Bell, Kyle Morlock. We also have to remember that it's their first year in this offense as well. And so, they've been learning they've all made nice plays, Keon and Jaheim particularly, but there's things they're learning about those guys as well. And those guys are learning or having to prove that they know exactly what they're supposed to be doing on every play. There was a play in the Clemson game in one of the third down incompletions that Jordan had where he wasn't happy. Darion Williamson, it looked like, read the route wrong. Mm-hmm. And so Jordan was frustrated by that. Well, again, he didn't have Kentron Portier. He didn't have Ja'Kai Douglas. So those are another reasons where I think as you get everything back together, it could look different. As far as what they're going to be, yeah, this game is interesting, but I also, there's one really big question mark. And again, you start to look for reasons why games might be closer than you think. They probably found something with their quarterback. Drones, who's now at quarterback for Virginia Tech, is more of a, running quarterback, 6'2", 235 pounds. That's going to be a challenge. He's going to make some plays. So the only reason I say that is I don't think Florida State has to win this game 62-7 for it to be, okay, they flipped the switch. They're going in the right direction. I think they're just playing cleaner on offense, more efficient. That was a word that Mike Norvell and Alex Atkins both used today. Being more efficient on offense, being more aggressive and assertive on defense. If those things happen, I think the score will take care of itself. And it doesn't need to be something crazy. You just want to see that progress.
And that's what we're going to see this Saturday is, can they make that progress happen? It's a 3:30 kick for Florida State and Virginia Tech. Florida State's game against Syracuse is not known yet. It's either going to be a noon kick or a 7:30 start at Doak for the Syracuse game. It's a 6-day option, dreaded 6-day option. The ACC is going to make a determination between Syracuse at Florida State and Miami and North Carolina for those 2 slots, either early in the day or later in the day. We'll see what Florida State can put on film between now and then to make that determination. For the 400 plus of you, this is the Monday Smash presented by our friend State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. His services are available throughout the state of Florida, throughout the state of Georgia and Alabama. An expert in the insurance game, Russ Voorhis is also a long time Noles supporter and an OG at Warchant.com, supporting us since before Ira there was a Warchant TV and there was a multimedia wing to Warchant. Russ has been around forever, and he can help you with any of your needs. If you've got questions, if you want clarification, and you're not pleased with maybe the way that your insurance is going right now, there are 2 phone numbers there for Russ, also russvoorhis.com for more information. Those are the physical brick and mortar locations of his offices, Ira. But Russ is an expert to be able to support anywhere in our southeastern footprint on Warchant TV.
Yeah, exactly. And it is one of those cool relationships where there was a personal relationship for Gene and Russ going back years and years and years. And I've got to know him. He's a really good guy. So it just works out perfectly that he's got a business that caters to a lot of Noles. He's a Nole. And we obviously have a great audience of Noles as well. And as you said, he can provide services throughout the Southeast, particularly Florida, Georgia, Alabama. And, give him a call, check out the website. I think they'll you can get an online request for consultations and things like that as well. And definitely highly recommend Russ, and hope you guys give him a chance.
He supports Florida State athletics in a big way, does Russ. He's a diehard. If you're a member of the staff at warchant.com, chances are you've had a few text conversations with Russ about the Noles. Very passionate fan, just like you all out there. Thank you to our sponsor, Russ Voorhis. Before we take a short break to hear a 15-second message from Russ, he doesn't like those 90-second ads. I love that about him. They're quick ads, Ira. But we're going to open up the questions, 4 questions the rest of the show. I wanted to start with one from R. Wilmer that I thought was a good question. So we'll do one of those, take a quick break, and then the rest of your questions to finish out the Monday Smash. Do you think we get off to a faster and successful start on offense this week? And Ira, this is a good question in 2 ways. Do you think they're going to be a little bit cleaner to start? But then I also think if you're just talking about a series of downs, 1st through 4th, they've been talking a lot about 3rd down success, and Mike Norvell had an answer about 3rd and 4th working together in some way. Now, if they get to 2nd and 5 or 2nd and 2 a little bit more often, they're going to be a hell of a lot more successful on 3rd down. What do you think about fast starts for Florida State, either in a game, the first quarter, or in a series of downs, success rate on 1st down?
Yeah, I think that's a big deal. And I also thought it was interesting. One thing Mike Norvell, I think it was Norvell, it might have been Atkins. One of them said today, it was Norvell. He said that, some of the shot plays they've taken down the field were, could have been runs. Those are decisions Jordan's making at the line of scrimmage. And so I think part of this week also could have been good for Jordan to think about, okay, if, you may think it's there, but if we don't get it, where does that leave us? And so some of those decisions from Jordan's standpoint, I think will be crucial as they go forward as well, because again, it's great to have confidence in these wide receivers, but those shot plays are not going to be as consistent. They're not going to be as high as percentage just by definition. So taking, especially at certain times of a game where it's just good to establish some rhythm and get everybody into the offense, I think it's something that they've been working through, and I think you're going to see that going forward. And if they do that, then, man, I really like their chances of getting into a lot more 3rd and manageables, because especially the Clemson game, it was a lot of deep pass on 1st down, run on 2nd down. Now you're in 3rd or 8, 3rd and 9 against that defensive front. And that's not the offensive line's fault at that point. That's a function of the entire offense that you're in this situation where it's going to be really difficult to protect.
My man Spencer coming through with the super chats. Thank you very much, Spencer. He says he loves the show and the information provided, and that's a very generous donation. Spencer is another guy, Ira, who's a huge Florida State fan. You might see him in Cary, North Carolina for the College Cup in a given year, or over at the Florida State Soccer Complex, or maybe behind home plate at Florida State softball. Thank you very much, Spencer. He's a friend of the program, but that is too generous.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it.
So we're going to take a 15-second break to hear more from our friend at russvoorhis.com. That's State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. This is the Monday Smash. We'll be right back on Warchant TV.
Contact Russ Voorhis for an auto quote today.
We're We're going to honor the request of Seminoles for the win 23. He wants a moment of silence for UF after that embarrassing performance on Saturday. Thank you for honoring that moment of silence for Florida as Kentucky has a 3-game win streak, Ira, for the first time since, was Eisenhower president? The last time that Kentucky beat Florida 3 straight. Interesting times in Gainesville.
It's funny. When they had that Tennessee win, I thought, okay, all right, we'll see what you're doing here, Billy. And then, not so good. They won. I think they beat Charlotte 22-7, which, you can kind of live with as long as you go out and play well against Kentucky. They were never in that game. I mean, Kentucky dominated that football game on both sides of the ball. Florida looked like they didn't want to be there.
Agreed. Also, your nickname, Ira, Don, is going with the Silver Wolf. What do you think? That's a little bit more predatorial than Silver Fox. What do you think about Silver Wolf?
Well, anything you want, buddy. Anything you want. Although I still think there's some black up there. People tell me there's not. My kids tell me there's not. So we'll go either way.
Well, the black hair can fight back, Ira, because now you're not covering dysfunction left and right for the football program. It's a little less stressful.
Right.
At warchant.com and Warchant TV. Plenty of content right now over at the website, warchant.com, including a piece tonight about the defense. Corey Clark penning something stemming from today's press conferences. And remember, everybody, Ira's 3-2-1s and practice coverage. It starts again tomorrow in earnest. Florida State is back in a routine. No weird weekday games, no bye weeks. This is going to be the routine moving forward. On Tuesday mornings and Wednesday mornings, you can expect head-to-toe coverage of Florida State practice from the football fields. It's going to be a really fascinating push. If you want to join the website, it's $1 for your first month. Just head over to warchant.com today. It's $1 for your first month. Give it a shot. You're not going to give it up. This is an awesome year to be covering Florida State, and we've got so many legitimate questions, and we will go to those questions now here on Warchant TV. So, Director Ben, behind the scenes, what do we have next on the Monday Smash, presented by State Farm agent Russ Fortas? The question is for Silver Wolf Chief. My God, he's Don. Can you get to 12 terms? It's like when Apollo Creed got introduced in Rocky, and Rocky says, "You got enough nicknames?" Can the Noles get this running game going? Very simple question. What says the Silver Wolf Chief, Ira?
I do think they will. I mean, I think that, again, Robert Scott getting back is big. Maurice Smith coming back in the last game was huge. You didn't get to see the results of it necessarily because you're playing against that Clemson defensive front, and they just weren't going to run the ball a whole lot. But I think if you have Maurice and Robert back, I think that solves a lot of problems. And I think that's going to help out the backs a lot. I also thought Trey Benson, it got lost in the story of the game because he didn't carry it a whole lot, but I thought he ran much more aggressively and more physically in that game as well. So I think the running game is going to get on track.
Yeah, I was interested to see. Sometimes we mere civilians. We watch a game and we see something, but it's not really true. Like the coaches will tell you that may have looked a certain way, but that's not how we're calling it. That's not how we're designing it. I was going nuts in my own living room watching Florida State at Clemson. There are a couple of runs that are blocked up, I thought. One for Lawrence Toafili, one for Trey Benson, and they got nothing out of it. And it drives you mad sitting on the couch because if you're not as consistent in blocking it up and being in a position to hit a home run, when it's there, you got to nail it. And the coaching staff today said that there were a couple of times where they did everything right. It's just the back's got to be the one to help it look good and look as good as it actually was on film. That's right. I would think that there's more urgency from the backs moving forward here.
Yeah, I think what happens sometimes, and again, this is, not to excuse it for them, but like if it's not there all the time, I think they lose confidence and they're not as aggressive. I thought there was at least one run with Lawrence where, if he has his eyes open and is really like looking to attack the defense, it could have been a huge game, but it almost felt like he was not expecting it to be open. He just kind of ran into the pile. I think it's easier for the backs to do that when they're getting consistent blocking.
We'll see what these numbers look like a month from now. I'm going to be fascinated. They're through 4 games. Trey Benson's your leading rusher. There it is, just under 200 yards. Only one other Florida State running back is over 100 through 4 games. That's nuts. I would have never envisioned that, Ira, but there it is. Rodney Hill is actually Florida State's second leading rusher to this point. We'll see what it looks like, again, after Florida State plays 3 straight home games. Next question on the Monday Smash, presented by State Farm agent Russ Fortas on Warchant TV. Remember to hit that like button underneath the video. Hey, it's Wes from the Villages. Hey, Tom. What time is the pregame show starting on Saturday? And, a promo question. Why, thank you, Wes. That's fantastic. Look forward to seeing you as well at Hotel Indigo. That is a 12:30 start on Saturday. 12:30 starts the pregame show. goes 12:30 to 2:30 from the 7th floor, overlooking Florida State's IM Fields, which is the giant parking lot, on a game day where all the great tailgates take place, and Doak Campbell. So Ira, Florida State finally gets to play a few home games consecutively, but it's a 3:30 kick followed by an opportunity against the Syracuse team that Clemson took care of, and it was a great spot for Syracuse to get Clemson, coming off of an emotional kick, a noon start to that game. But Florida State's got a chance to get right and maybe quiet a lot of these complaints with 2 home games, just their second and third of the season coming up in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, and Clemson's solid. Virginia Tech, again, we talked about they've shown a little life, getting that win against Pitt, obviously beating Pitt at home. This is not a very good Pitt team, and then going on the road and competing with Florida State's a totally different story. But I think that's a perfect game in this situation. And then Syracuse is kind of a step up, and then Duke is going to be the next really big test for this football team because Duke's good, especially if their quarterback's healthy. We don't know yet. They did say that he had a high ankle sprain and will probably be out a few weeks. The game is in basically 3 weeks, so we don't know yet whether or not they're going to have their quarterback, and if they do have him, how mobile he's going to be. Yep. But either way, it should be a good game. Duke's defense is legit, and again, I think that I like the way this month sets up in terms of kind of gradually getting stiffer challenges.
It's one big happy family in the Warchant multimedia teams, and this is what I mean. It's 12:30 for Hotel Indigo's pregame show on Saturday. But if you would like some yay sausage on a game day, the official provider, Ira, of that #1 tailgate item at Hotel Indigo, thanks to our friend Jay Green working with Ben from Registers, is Register Sausage. So what is better if you're a headliner out there tuning in tomorrow, Warchant TV at 1 o'clock, than coming by saying, hey, enjoying some yay sausage on a yay game day? Pretty good, Ira.
It's awesome. In fact, the only other home game, I was talking to a couple of people who had Registers for the first time at the game, and a little hot dog bun or sausage, I don't know, sausage roll, hot dog bun, but it's basically like a sausage is a hot dog, and they could not say enough good things. So excited about it.
Now, next up on the Monday Smash.
Wait, hold on. What was the text about the O's?
Oh, hey, Ira, our O's and the 40-year drought takedown Philly in 5 completed 83. Boy, I'm sure that's what happened in 1983. Is that true, Ira?
It's no. Well, I mean, it wasn't a 40-year drought. Yeah. Well, I guess he's saying it's 40 years since the last time they won a World Series. Okay, so he's saying that's what's going to happen. It's going to be a rerun of that. Yeah, that's who they played then. They played the Phillies in '83.
Okay, Ira, it's a night kickoff. This is not actually what's happening. This is not what's happening, folks. This is a fictional scenario, but I wanted to take it to night kickoff, Snuggy Hill, the end of this month. Florida State wants to take that hill. Is Ira watching Baltimore Orioles baseball in the press box at Snuggy Hill while presiding over his day job, which he cares about greatly, but not as much as the O's? Are you pulling double duty, Florida State roadie to Wake Forest, and still watching Baltimore Orioles baseball?
Yeah, man, I'll be paying attention to the baseball.
They're still playing.
Yeah, I'll be paying attention if they're still playing. Oh. Yeah, it's this is the cool thing about this whole experience has been, and again, this isn't Orioles headline or Orioles smash, but it's cool to be a fan of sports today. Like I haven't had that, like I'm, like the people watching this, you guys are fans of Florida State. There's access to so much information from us and then all the other outlets that cover Florida State, and you get to see all the games. But the last time I really cared about the Orioles, like I didn't have the MLB package. I didn't have wall-to-wall coverage of everything they do. So that's been really cool and definitely enjoying it. And I don't know how I'm going to, game days are going to be a challenge. So they're going to be playing Saturday. We'll see what time what time the first game is for the Orioles, but they'll be playing the same day as the Virginia Tech game.
Would you and Corey, I'm going to be a headliner question. This is ahead of tomorrow. Would you and Corey commit to a road trip back and forth between Atlanta and Baltimore for a World Series? Like, we'll hold it down here. We'll cover the team, and then you guys can write, and we'll send you the audio from practices. But would you guys do a video series in which you drive back and forth from Atlanta to Baltimore and go watch the two teams go at it for the World Series?
I think one of us would end up killing the other one, but it's something to think about.
Yeah, fair enough. I think we all would. This would be must-see television. Road trips with Warchant staff it's got its own cult following these days. Excellent content. But we'll see what happens. For you Braves fans out there, good luck. All the pressure's on you. You guys should win. If you don't, it's a terrible disappointment. Next question on the Monday Smash presented by State Farm Agent. I'm jealous. It's true. If we are aggressive, can we depend on guys keeping their assignments, says Island Chief. That's a great question. I'll start with it. Bringing pressure means you got to get home. If you don't, something's going to be open. And if you're talking about blitzing and bringing extra guys, there's a great play, Ira, made by Renardo Green on a 3rd and 12 against Clemson where they bring pressure. It's a one-on-one. You'll give up the slant underneath, no problem. But Renardo better make that play or else the receiver's going to be running for a long time. And they force a 4th and 4. Renardo cleans it up. They punt. But that's the give and take of being more aggressive. What say you?
Right. No, I agree. Thanks for pointing that out and asking that question, Island Chief. It's one of the things I was texting with Corey and Aslan over the weekend, like looking at, Corey liked the way NC State's defense was playing in their game Friday night against Louisville, just the way they were being so aggressive. And it's like every snap, they've got 7, 8 guys on the line of scrimmage and they're dropping back into coverage and zone blitzes and all these different things. And it's like, that's what kind of Corey wants to see after seeing Florida State's defense be a little bit more, passive, I guess you'd say.
Yep.
But, NC State also gave up 45 to Notre Dame. Notre Dame could barely get out of their own way on offense in these last couple of games. They had 45 against NC State. So there's a trade-off. Sometimes it like Adam Fuller said today, if I thought blitzing every play was going to work, we would do it all the time. So I think that the truth is somewhere in between. I think they can be more aggressive than they've been. But yeah, to Island Chief's point, that you are going to tend to give up some plays. And I think we also need to take the context of last year. Last year's defense, and it's a lot of these same guys. They were not very aggressive last year because I don't think they had confidence in those guys, and they didn't want to give up a lot of big plays. Well, now they're going to start asking them. I think they're going to ask them to be more aggressive, but that could lead to some big plays, and then you have to deal with the repercussions of that. So, but the reality is, they haven't been stopping big plays so far. They've been giving up a lot of big plays this year. So you're not really even getting that result that you want.
Yeah, might as well go 100 miles an hour if you're going to be giving up explosives anyway. Let's see. Spartan Noel. Hey, Spartan Noel. Hope you're doing well. He's living on the edge. Tomcat, do you think the linebackers are better than this time last year? I think the world's better. Are they perfect? No. But I think either they're healthier and they're making more plays. It doesn't mean that this is maybe to the discussion that you just had. Maybe it's a little bit boom or bust, but they're making more plays than they did last year, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, and this is, we were so excited. How excited were we in the spring of 2022 when we first saw Tatum Bethune? Like, I was excited. I thought he was going to be a heat-seeking missile. Not Derek Brooks, but I thought he would be a very good college linebacker, very aggressive, and show some athleticism. Last year, he got worn down. He wasn't healthy. And maybe Deloach was as well, but Tatum definitely was. And so he was still their second leading tackler, despite never really being healthy, and a lot of weeks not even really practicing. So it's been cool to see him full speed, full strength. Kalen getting more and more comfortable. Yeah, man, I think they played well. They're not the best linebacker in the country, but I think they played really well.
Yeah, I agree. Look, the depth is not where it needs to be. There are some guys who might get some opportunities the second half of the season. It'll be interesting. Florida State talked about it in the defensive back room. You mentioned this on the JCS today, Ira. But just because you're young doesn't mean you can't play. You can earn your way on the field. Blake Nicholson's going to have an opportunity, I think.
That's a good point. I was really wondering about that as well. He definitely specifically came. Adam Fuller talked about wanting to get some of the younger guys into the action more, force that in these next few weeks. But then he followed up by specifically talking about the young DBs. But I think you're 100% right. I think it's the young linebackers too. I think it's Blake Nicholson. I think it's probably also a guy from Northwestern.
Yeah, Cryer.
Cryer, 28. So I think those two guys particularly maybe as well. And now, again, that's not to say Omar Graham or DJ Lundy are not going to be factors, but, I think they want to push some of these veterans with these talented young guys because they've got a lot of really talented young guys on that defense.
Alex Atkins said it before the season started. His favorite thing is to bench old guys for young guys. I haven't been able to do it on the offensive line, but in general, this coaching staff's not afraid to play young players. You go all the way back a couple of years ago for the revelation that was Amarian Cooper. Now that his career didn't continue down that path, but it was, wow, where did this guy come from? They're not afraid to play him.
Although he's looking really good at Colorado. He's made plays at Colorado. It's weird. It's giving me a mystery. I don't know what happened to him last year.
Yeah, that's maybe a deep dive.
He wasn't healthy. I think that's part of it, but yeah.
But still, yeah, they wanted him to be a safety this spring. He didn't take to it. Yeah, it's you could see why they were looking for safety help this spring in retrospect.
Yeah.
Daryl, do you think we will solve the problem defending another mobile quarterback? Seems like everybody's got one. Garrett Schrader's coming to town in a couple weeks too, Iron. He's a physical runner. Do you think Florida State will solve the problem of the mobile quarterback? It's an issue for everybody, not just Florida State, but what do you think?
Yeah, I'll be curious to see how they handle it. It's like the Jaden Daniels. They've all been kind of unique situations, and then a lot of it depends on what kind of weapons you have at wide receiver as well. Whether or not they could sell out to stop the running quarterback or not. This guy's he hasn't played a ton. He had a lot of success running against Pitt's defense, which doesn't look like a normal Pitt defense, and they were at home. This week they're coming to Tallahassee. I think Florida State needs to they need to wear him out. And the difference, again, Castellanos, you weren't going to get a finger on it. I mean, the problem with a guy like Castellanos from BC is you rarely almost ever get a good hit on him. So you can't really, kind of give him reasons to not want to run the ball as much. Mm-hmm. But with a big dude like this, I think they have the ability to do that. Now he's going to be able to deliver punishment too. He's a big kid, 235 pounds, but I think you're going to see them really be physical with him, and that could deter a little bit of that.
It's a fun subplot for this game to see how much inspiration they play with. Do they come out of the bye week with their hair on fire? The coaching staff, I think, has coached them that way in practice. The bye week, they didn't relax in the way that they were messaging. It would be fascinating to watch on Saturday afternoon. To the nearly 500 of you watching, this is the final 10 minutes or so of the Monday Smash. Get those questions in the chat and hit the like button. This is Monday Smash presented by our friend State Farm agent Russ Forhis. The show will be back on Sunday night this week, so we're back into the flow. Sunday night, 7 o'clock. We'll see you then for the next edition. Get down or lay down. He's looking at Billy Napier saying, not going to work. Will Florida's interim coach have them ready to play Florida State by the end of the year? That's a massive buyout, Ira, if it goes that way. But you could see where, given Florida's issues, how many W's are left on the schedule. Fascinating times.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how it goes. I will say this. There's plenty. I mean, you just talk to Florida fans. We all have friends who are Florida fans, and a lot of them are done. The media is starting to go after him. I'll say this, though. It probably is going to tie up to whether or not they want to fire. I mean, if they fire him, it's going to be Strickland, too. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to be a package deal. If either one of them gets fired, I think they both get fired. And I don't think it's out of the realm that it happens after this year. But if they can win 7 games, I think he can hang around. But if it's 6 or less, I think, man, they may be in trouble.
They might be in trouble. Well, it's a hell of a thing. We'll document it on the Smash as the season goes along. Do you think we will focus more on our slot receivers in the coming weeks? Weldon Taylor. Nice name, Weldon, by the way, first of all. There's a lot of greatness in that first name of yours. What do you think, Ira? Does Destin Hill exist once again? Does Winston Wright, maybe Ja'Kai Douglas, Kentron? What about that receiver room?
That was my favorite comment. We put up the depth chart on the website this morning when FSU released it, as they do every Monday morning, and I put it up on the message boards, and the first response was, because this week the one change was Ja'Kai Douglas is listed as a co-starter with Winston Wright and Destin Hill at slot receiver. And the person was like, I don't know why we list a slot receiver since we're never going to throw to him anyway. I think I do think you'll see more of it. The problem is getting them on the field. I mean, they're not even really on the field very much. They've been so much with 2 tight ends, and then you've got, the 2 outside receivers are really talented. I mean, they just haven't, it's not like Destin Hill's been on the field, or Winston Wright's been on the field for 40 snaps a game and not getting the ball. A lot of times they're not even in the game. So I think that'll maybe change as they move forward and look at opportunities to maybe attack some teams a little bit more over the middle. But I can't say for sure because we haven't seen it yet. What do you think?
Well, that depth chart, unfortunately, the way you share the tabs, you can't zoom in as much. So if you didn't read that, folks, don't worry about it. It doesn't mean your eyes are going bad. It's just a very small photo. I think I want to see a few plays in the upcoming weeks. Maybe there is a one-on-one and they take it underneath. Like, I want to see if there was a point of emphasis. I think what Jordan does, even if there's a one-on-one with Johnny or Keon, what he does tells me how he was coached during the bye week. Mm-hmm. And so I'm fascinated to see.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, Ja'Kai,
to give him the benefit of the doubt too, because he's a senior quarterback. There could have been situations where they sat down as a group and said, like, what are we not doing that we need to be? He may have kind of, if that happens, he may have been part of that process.
Correct. For the Clemson example specifically, they covered very well. Clemson covered very, very well. There were times there were things open over the middle, but they're bringing pressure. You don't have much in the way of a third and a fourth second to go through your reads and then hit somebody over the middle, Ira. The one-on-one is a correct decision. You just, you want a little bit more flow to the offense. They've been
Plus,
good.
Again, man, with those linebackers in the middle of the field, man, I'm not thrilled about throwing the ball in that part of the. I mean, you won't see better linebackers than Clemson at.
No, easily, and that's the other thing. Like we talk about it in the preseason, then you blow past the game, and you're like, well, what do you need to do better? Well, you're going to play worse players. They're going to be worse competition on the other side of the field. You just got through the most talented defense, top to bottom, that you're going to see in the 12-game schedule. So now go make it look like you've gotten past the best defense that you're going to see. Gator Kirk, what's up, Gator? From the 757. Hope to talk to you in the postgame show on Saturday, good sir. Fuller has said since his hiring that the defense would dictate what the opposing offense was going to do after 3+ years. When is this going to happen? Fits and starts this year, but that's a good pointed question, Ira. What do you think?
It is. Gator Kirk's one of the people that listens to every press conference and keeps them all in context, because that's a good point. That was definitely a message from Adam Fuller when he first got to Florida State. The reality is, and those things sound great in introductory press conferences, but part of it is like finding out what you've got. And if we think back to those first couple of years, they had defensive players that didn't believe in what they were doing on the whole team. You had players on those teams that didn't really believe in what was happening, and they weren't all bought in. I think we saw that start to change over the last year and a half. So now I think you're seeing more of it. Yeah, man, but I agree. I mean, I think there's a if you've got, you went out and got Fentrell Cypress because he was an all ACC cornerback. You believe in Renardo Green. I think there's a lot of people at FSU who think he's an NFL cornerback. You've got some questions though, when Akeem Dent gets hurt, so maybe that shows that maybe they haven't been as confident in the safety play. But yeah, man, at some point you got to go for it. I mean, I think, and they've done it when their back's against the wall. I guess the point, Adam Fuller, if you watched today's interview today, his point that he kept making was we shouldn't have to need our back against the wall for us to play with that aggression. And I think the message he's probably also sending to them is just because we're not calling a blitz or just because we're not calling, some exotic defense, that doesn't mean you can't be on the attack.
Right.
And so that needs to come from them as well. And so I think, again, it's a fair question. It's a fair criticism. I think they think it's coming, but we'll have to just see.
Yeah, if you're not playing press across the board, it doesn't mean you can't be physical. But I think if a lot of people are hearing that and saying, well, then it's on you, my man, then, force the issue. That's what we're going to see. Last couple of questions here on the Monday Smash. Tom and Ira, question from R. Wilmer. Who have you seen at practice that is ready or close to ready to contribute in meaningful downs? That's a really good question. You could go any number of ways. I'm going to say a name that's going to drive you all nuts. But I think some of the slot receivers are capable, and they do so at practice where you see a situation or a one-on-one. Like, I think Destin Hill could have a big 8-game sequence coming up for Florida State. I've seen him make plays in practice. I think it's there to be made. Ira, blank canvas, offense, defense. What do you think? Who stood out to you?
Yeah, no, Destin Hill is a good answer. I've started to wonder if maybe they don't feel super confident in every package that he knows exactly what he's doing. He's only been here since the summer. He hadn't played football for 2 years. There's no question Destin Hill has tons of talent. They have to get the ball in his hands, they don't have to, but it would be great to get the ball in his hands. He'd be a good answer on offense. I think defensively, a guy I really want to see that I think could get out there soon is Conrad Hussey. It's safety. I think that, listening to Adam Fuller talk today, he really wants those young DBs, also linebackers, but those young DBs, Conrad Hussey, KJ Kirkland, Quindarius Jones, maybe Edwin Joseph, maybe some of those guys to assert themselves and demand to be out there. But Conrad Hussey to me might be that guy. I think he's a future star. And the question is, can he get there? And I think Jeff made this comment on the show today that, his upside is probably higher than what you have out there in the older guys. The question is, can you get that out of him now? So I think that's a guy I really want to see out there soon.
One situational player I'll give you, and I'm not saying an every down player, but situations. I think Keziah Holmes might have a bigger role moving forward too. He looks close, and he's made some big plays last week, specifically at practice, where I'm saying, okay, well, if you're going to do that, then you might rotate in a little bit earlier. But that running back room is so crowded that who the hell knows how they're going to make sense of it with the distribution.
Well, the other problem they've had on offense, they just haven't had a lot of snaps, so it's hard to rotate a lot of guys in when your starters are not playing that much.
Yep. This will be the last question for tonight on Monday Smash. Thank you to everybody who's tuned in. Make sure to hit the like button underneath the video. Nearly 500 of you watching. And thanks to our sponsor, State Farm agent Russ Forrest. From Joseph, how was the running game in fall camp when you guys were watching? Were you guys concerned in fall camp about the running game? What do you think, Ira? We never really talked about this during fall camp. But what do you think?
It's a great question, and I appreciate you saying that, asking that question, Joseph, because I saw some comments on Twitter that the feeling was that the media had built up the running game in camp because of how highly we talked about these offensive linemen. Two things there. Number one, what we talked up about the offensive linemen was the fact that you had this depth. I think if you go back and listen to what we were saying, and probably most people on the beat were saying, was you have 8 experienced offensive linemen. That's not normal. But I don't think any of us were saying you've got a great offensive line or that you've got 8 great offensive linemen. You had 8 experienced, solid offensive linemen. Now, again, you were playing without a couple of them for this part of the last month. I didn't ever felt like in the off that from what we saw in camp, and I'm curious to hear what you think, Tom. I never felt like the running game looked amazing. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. Part of it's hard to tell sometimes because the way they run a lot of times is that they don't go full contact, and so it's hard to tell whether or not a guy would have gotten through that hole. Would he have broken through an arm tackle, or would he have gotten stopped? I mean, it's just because they don't tackle to the ground. It's just hard to get a great feel for that. But I never walked out of a practice in the preseason and thought, well, the running game is going to be amazing. I think what we all felt was you've got 8 experienced offensive linemen. You've got a really smart offensive coordinator in Alex Atkins, a really smart head coach in Mike Norvell, and a really talented backfield. That should portend that they're going to be able to run the ball similar to what they did last year. But no, I never felt from watching practices that, there's no question they're going to be able to run the ball well.
Yeah, it's so hard to assess in the moment because next to a quarterback sack being whistled dead in the open field, or, you could see Jordan breaking away, but the official blows the whistle because he's in a non-contact jersey. The next hardest thing is the running game, like you're talking about. There isn't full contact. We don't see those scrimmages when that does happen. I thought there were a lot of 1s and 2s and run stuffs, talking about those gains. But it's also difficult, Ira, because you're wondering, does that mean the defense is really good? And the run defense has proven to be very good for Florida State. But there weren't days where they were shut out. I thought it was streaky. Like, they were explosive at times. And it's also hard to know, Ira, if you're calling your base or if you're trying to work on other things in the running game, maybe some different concepts, because you can run counter, or at least they thought that they could run counter with great consistency in fall camp. So I thought it was explosive in camp, but it wasn't the focal point. I thought Jordan making plays was the focal point of fall camp. If you're talking about how the offense got down the field, it was Jordan Travis making throws. It wasn't Trey Benson dominating a practice. Do you think that's fair?
No, I agree with that 100%. And I also think, and that probably speaks to what we've seen in the first month of the season. They've been, and again, I mean, I think part of it is you brought in these weapons in the passing game. Today, Alex Atkins talked about it. He said, look, we're going to take shots. We think we've got better skill players out wide than the defense is going to have covering them. And we've got a great quarterback in Jordan Travis. We're going to take shots. But the downside of that is it's going to look a little different than it did last year. And it has in the past. But you'd like to be able to marry that with a more consistent running game. And no, it hasn't been there. I'd still like to know, it's a question, we can't answer, but I'd like to know what it would look like with Robert Scott and Maurice Smith for all of these games. And again, the other thing is the backs, Trey Benson and Lawrence Toafili. I mean, they wore non-contact jerseys a lot in the preseason as well, because you don't want those guys to get hit and beaten up and then not be 100% when the season started. So you never really got to see them run with authority through tackles. And, early this season, Trey didn't look like the same guy from last year, but we wouldn't have known that from practice. The coaches wouldn't have known that from practice. So there's a lot of reasons why, I don't think there's any reason we would have been able to come to people during the preseason and say, guys, I don't know about this running game. And to your point, they did, the runs we did see that you did notice were the explosives where, man, they hit it and they were gone. And it's hard to evaluate the play to play.
Yeah, and maybe that's a larger topic that we can discuss in the offseason. It's just, should the running backs be live more so you know what you have? And does it take them a while to get up to speed because they're not always live? And it wasn't the case for every player, but, maybe there's something to that. But there's plenty of time to break all that down as Florida State now, 8 more games in the regular season, finally starting to play at home. This is a fascinating time, Ira, for Florida State to be a top 5 team in the country. They get the 2 big wins that in the preseason we all circled, and yet, there's still a lot more that you want to see out of them. How do they get to the point where they could be dominant and leave no doubt in the minds of pollsters or the playoff committee or everybody on Warchant.com's largest FSU fan community message board? It's time, sir, for that one more thing. Promo it. What do we got this week at Warchant? What are you interested and excited to share for the folks on the website side before we sign off tonight?
Yeah, we'll be talking writing a lot about what we talked about in the show. And the next big story I think that we're going to have is about the running game and kind of getting it going. Some of the reasons why it hasn't succeeded so far and why it might going forward. But yeah, practice gets back at it tomorrow, like you said, Tuesday and Wednesday. So we'll have coverage out there. We'll have looking ahead to what Virginia Tech offers. We've got some recruiting coverage as well. Michael's got his 5 top targets to watch for the 2025 class, which is hard to believe, man. They're already hot and heavy on the 2025 kids because they have 21 commitments. It's the number 6 class in the country for 2024. So he's got to look at that as well. And then I think he's trying to get up with a couple of the current players who are going to be in town. This is the one cool thing about this game. It's only the second home game. So they're going to have a lot of visitors. It's the first ACC home game. So a lot of recruits are going to be here this weekend. So we'll also be previewing that. Some of the guys who are going to be here for recruiting visits this weekend.
Yeah, that's like having the ball for one possession in the first quarter. That's right. Happened to Florida State, but with recruiting, I saw there was one question: what gives? Well, if you're never at home, you can't have visits. You can't host these weekends, and so you're going to hear more about Florida State and kids being on campus. That's all coming to Warchant.com. It's always free here on Warchant TV. Like the video, hit the subscribe button. Wake Up Warchant comes your way tomorrow morning, live with Corey. Well, live to tape with Corey and Aslan. That'll be on your feeds, on your pod feeds, on Warchant TV. We've got practice coverage and 1 o'clock Seminole headlines here on the channel tomorrow. The guys are going to mix it up. Are they going to be in the same studio? Ira, are you declaring yourself eligible to be in the studio tomorrow?
I'm there. Is everything set up? Are the facilities okay? We're all good to go? If we are,
hey, Jimbo over here, facilities are fine. There's more than enough facilities here to get a win. But yes, the studios, they had some fiber issues today that they had to work through, but everything should be okay at the 93.3 studios.
No, we'll be there, and I promise, I'm going to be there for the entire 2 hours this time. Jeff's not going to have to kick me out for coughing this time.
Yeah, you're not like that. Some of those offensive and defensive linemen that during camp, they're like, hey, you know what? I'm done. Let me go sit over here for a couple of plays.
I'm going to try to, I'll be better than that. I will say thanks again to everybody that watched. I mean, I knew you're going to wrap it up, but every time we do these, we move it around a little bit from Sundays to Mondays, and we really appreciate everybody that keeps coming back and participating in the conversation. That's the big thing. If you're going to watch these shows, get in the chat, participate, and maybe we'll talk and answer your questions. This
is one of my favorites that we've done, Aaron, just in terms of the questions themselves. This is a fascinating team to watch, and everybody's tuned in. Everybody is really interested to see what comes next. So join the conversation over on the message boards at warchant.com. $1 for your first month. Thank you to Robert for his contribution to the program, to Spencer. What's up, Spence? Hope you're doing well, my friend, and everybody else who brought those questions. You make the show better, as Ira said. And this has been the Monday Smash presented by State Farm agent Russ Forhis. For Ira Schoffel, director Ben behind the scenes, who did a kick-ass job as always. My name is Tom Lang. We will talk to you on Warchant TV next time.